Hi everybody. My name is Ali Sharifi. I'm a technical specialist covering Teams platform and Power Platform within Microsoft. I'm based in Vancouver, BC. Today, as always, I have Chuck with me. Chuck, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm a senior program manager on the Power Apps team. Back to you, Ali.
And we also have a great partner, Canadian partner here, that's Sean and Ram. So Sean, if you want to kind of introduce yourself and let us know what you do with Fidelity Factory.
Thank you, Ali. Yeah, so I'm Sean Panter. We started Fidelity Factory back in 2011. We have a pretty long history with business process automation and workflow, and we've pretty much been working with the Power Platform since it was in its very early stages, and that's a massive part of our business here at Fidelity. So happy to be joining the presenters here today.
Awesome. And if you are interested to learn more about Fidelity, if you go to one of these App Day sessions, I know that there's a website, probably Sean, you can post it in the chat here, but anybody can join these virtual sessions and kind of learn about App Day. And I know that Fidelity team kind of running these, I think once or twice a month at least across the board here in Western Canada. But since it is remote, I guess anybody can join, right, to some extent. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll paste the login or the registration page up to the chat right now.
Thank you, Sean. So today's agenda is kind of going through some of the Ignite announcements and see what is being announced last few days. From there, I'll pass it on to Sean to walk us through the Common Data Service, aka CDS, and also model-driven apps and how to build these sort of apps within Power Platform. And from there, I'll pass it on to Chuck to walk us through Project Oakdale and the Power Platform and Power Apps integration with Teams. So let's just get started on the Ignite announcement. So I would say the first thing that's actually, I'm going to paste this link in the chat here. Let me see if I can actually copy it. There's actually a link that probably I found it really useful actually to kind of get going on all the announcement out there. But let's see if I can open it up here. So there's actually a book of announcement for Ignite 2020. So in this link, you can go and see the table of contents, and you can see all the announcement that's been kind of announced last few days for different categories of applications that we have, but from Azure all the way to Power Platform, business applications, Microsoft 365, and etc. So you can take a look at it and read all the great announcement, for instance, that we made here. For instance, if you go to Microsoft Teams and look at the Power Platform integration, you can read about what is being announced, what capabilities are coming to Teams, Project Oaktails, and a few others. We also have, in this link, there's also a couple of videos that you can take a look. But I'm going to paste it here in chat. Take a look at it, maybe if you have time later on. But this is a great resource actually to just look at all the announcement in the same place. There you go. So in terms of the announcement for Power Platform, Power Automate is one of the bigger ones here. So with the RPA features that we announced, this allows anybody kind of using the RPA. So as you remember, we had this Softomotive acquisition a few months ago, and the product team was working to kind of aggregate all of these tool sets together and put it under the same brand. So the Power Automate desktop being released actually is in preview, in a public preview a few days ago. And you can go actually and download the tool and play around with it. I think you can do 30 days trial to kind of go through the tool and use all the premium features that is available there. But essentially, this kind of unlocks the door for any UI automation that you want to do in the organizations. So you can use all the APIs that we have. But I mean, when you hit that blockers that there's no API for the application, you can go and use the RPA through the Power Automate desktop here. So essentially, this is kind of bringing all the Softomotive and bin automation features that we had with that acquisition to inside the Power Automate toolset and kind of unlocking thousands of actions and triggers that are kind of available here. So as you see on the left side here, you can do a lot of different things that actually were missing from our previous automation or UI automation tool that we had before. But this one kind of has a lot of more actions here for Excel, for for different systems and applications. So check it out. It's kind of interesting and it's really exciting to see this here. The other one is, I mean, there were a couple of good announcements for pro developers with Power Platform. So one of them is the Azure API Management Connector. So with this announcement, you can go and build your APIs as a pro developer. So if you have a team of developers, they can go and build these and all these APIs in front of the applications, and then by one click, kind of make it available in Power Platform. So as we saw on the previous screen, they can go to Azure, they can select the API. And right from the same Azure portal, they can go and export this to Power Apps and Power Automate. So this just makes it much easier. Instead of building those custom connectors, they can just go to the same by one click, publish it to the Power Platform. And on the Power Platform side, citizen developers can use the connectors again right from the same place as you see on the connector side, and they can get the data from those applications. And the other good announcement on this side is that, I mean, this is actually is free of charge. So if you have Teams licenses, if you have Microsoft 365 licenses, this doesn't require premium capacity. So with Project Octal and Teams extension, this is included, which is kind of exciting and interesting. And if there's any question, come off mute. I mean, some of these are quite new, and I haven't actually had a chance to go on through them. But the other interesting one is a GitHub Actions for Power Platform. So I know that there's this set of tools available that we made available for Azure DevOps. So previously you could use Azure DevOps to do ALM scenarios, application lifecycle management for dev test production through Azure DevOps. But a few days ago we announced the integration of GitHub Actions for Power Platform. So now pro developers, they have more options to do integrations and go through the lifecycle of their applications. And this just kind of opens up the door for people who are using GitHub at this point, and they're not really limited to Azure for the ALM scenarios. So quite interesting. I haven't actually tried it myself, but it's kind of I need to spend some time to kind of try this out as well. Project Octal and Teams integration was actually another really great announcement. So this one, so previously, if you want to build an application, you could build these applications in Power Apps or Power Automate, and then you had to export the solutions or export the apps and import them within Teams. But essentially, this experience allows you to just use Teams and within the same place that you actually do your collaboration, calling, and stuff like that. Also enable the business application or line of business application. So this is actually great, specifically for citizens. If they just want to build application quickly within Microsoft Teams, they can use the Project Octal, which is kind of limited version of CDS that we made available within the Power Platform. So this has been actually really interesting announcement, and kind of unlocks the door for many applications that you were blocked to build before. The last piece that I have here is for the Power Virtual Agent. So the same experience that we saw within the with Power Apps in Teams through Project Octal, we also made Power Virtual Agent available within Teams. So if you're using right now Microsoft Teams, you can go and add these components to Teams and be able to build these chatbots through Microsoft Teams. So again, bringing all of these components to Microsoft Teams, and as everybody's kind of working remotely these days, it just makes it much easier that you just log into Teams in the morning and you have all of your applications, all of your phone calls and collaboration at the same place. So this is gonna makes it a hub for teamwork or a hub for your daily job that you do. So before I pass it on to Sean, I have actually a couple of items here that I want to also show. I know that Chuck will go through this in detail, but essentially I'm on the Microsoft Teams on the browser. So if you go and add these, click on these buttons, you can go and search for more apps, and you can go and add the Power Apps to directly to Teams right from here. So this essentially adds the Power Apps Maker portal within Microsoft Teams. The same way you can also go and add Power Automate or Flow, and you can add it to the Teams. And for virtual agents, you can also go and search for Power Virtual Agent and add those within Teams as well. So once you add these to your Teams environment, you can go and pin them on the left rail, And once it is actually pinned on the left, right, you can go and open up the designer or app maker within the teams. So you don't have to switch actually to a browser to be able to build apps. And right from this screen, you can go and build an application right from the same screen. So I actually built one before. Let's just take a look. So you can quite easily go and build a new app. If I just go back, you can click on new, create a new app right from the same screen and publish it directly from, with one click to a specific Teams channel right from the Microsoft Teams. And there are more details in terms of security and how the limits are for data and stuff like that. But anybody with Teams license can come and build these applications. And I would say the biggest highlight of this announcement is that previously a lot of organizations use SharePoint to build the application, which kind of makes sense for many scenarios. But if you hit those roadblocks with SharePoint, you might become really complex to kind of convert that SharePoint application to SQL or CDS. But the beauty with this kind of approach is that you have access to these tool sets, through your Microsoft licenses. You can build this application, and if you hit that roadblock or if you need to kind of upgrade, you have this upgrade path that Oakdale, no limit. So and the last thing that I want to show here is our return to work solution. So I'm not sure if you have seen this solution, but this is actually a complete solution that is built on Power Platform. So if you haven't actually checked it out, go and check it out. It's quite actually interesting to see all these components built within the Power Platform. So, and it has actually different, it has actually 3 or 4 apps within this solution. So if your organization looking for, a solution to kind of enable your facility managers or your employees to provide attestation and, before they go to the office every morning, kind of provide, checking and checkout. Make sure to check out this application. This is actually built by Microsoft last few months, and you can go and actually customize it as well. For instance, this is the screen for employees that they can use to go and provide attestation and stuff like that. And at the same time, we also have back office users. They can do case management. They can do facility readiness and stuff like that. So quite interesting. You can go actually by one click install it on your environment, and you can also customize it if you want to, change the look and feel and stuff like that.
And we just put a new version up last week. There's a brand new version up.
3 days ago, actually I have it up and running here. So if maybe it's worth to just go through the employee version of this, and this allows you to kind of set up your floors and set up your capacities for each one of these facilities and kind of define the intervals for each facility. For instance, if I'm logging in and I can go and get a day pass for a specific building, so you can provide, for instance, you can actually go and check the status of different buildings, but you can go get a day pass for a specific building. So if I go and click day pass, I can, look at different offices, but for now, I'm just going to go and take a look at Vancouver office. You can define what is your arrival time. So you can say, okay, I'm going to go, I don't know, in half an hour or maybe in an hour to the office, and click next. You provide your, your consent and your daily attestation that you don't have, you don't have any coughing or you don't have any fever. And you click agree, and from this screen you get a day pass for going to the office. And once you get to the office, I mean, there are like different pieces coming in, but you can integrate with IoT sensors and IoT tools, and your badge that you have and that requires to get into the buildings and stuff like that.
So at Microsoft, if you don't have your day pass and you swipe in, it automatically sends an email to your manager. I won't tell you how I know that. So anyway, sorry, Ali, go ahead.
I haven't gone to the office last while, so I don't know. But it's quite interesting. I mean, a lot of organizations using this tool. But yeah, so if there's any questions, reach out or just go and check it out. You can just Google it on the Google or go to this actually address, which I'm going to paste in the chat. Quite interesting solution on Power Platform. All right, so I'm just going to pass it on to Sean to walk us through the CDS and model-driven app. Sean?
All right, great. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
I have a few slides that I'm going to run through here, just to give a little intro and some background on what we're going to be actually building. So to introduce model-driven apps, I wanted to just cover off a few important things that everyone should know that's going to be making model-driven apps. So they are dependent on the common data service. So you know, that's you know a strict dependency on your model-driven apps. There is they are relying fully on the common data service, and I would consider it a bit of a create and combine scenario. So you'll see it in the demonstration that I'm going to provide here. You do a lot of work in the CDS to begin with. You need to make sure that your entities are set up appropriately, and they're able to capture all the information that's going to be part of your app. And after you've got all the work in the CDS done, you can combine them in your model-driven apps. So you take that investment that you've made in the CDS and you roll it into a model-driven app, and you have a codeless app that you can create at that point. So that leads to the next point. It is truly a no-code solution. So you're not going to find yourself even writing so much as really an expression in there. And it is more of a configuration type of development. So you're going to be designing your entities and kind of configuring all the properties of them so that they're ready and kind of ready to store the data that you're going to provide them with. So another great thing about model-driven apps is they are fully responsive, and they will work factors. So you don't have to do any extra work to make sure that your app is going to look good on a mobile device or a laptop, desktop, or tablet. It is taken care of for you. So that's another win there on the front of model-driven apps. They do work online and offline, and model-driven apps do require premium licensing. So that's another consideration. Project Oakdale, which Chuck's going to be talking about next, may expose more of the CDS functionality, but traditional model-driven apps are a premium feature. So more about the common data service. The CDS, as it's referred to, is truly a service. It's not just another place to keep your data. There's so much more that you can do with it. So obviously entities are meant to store and manage your data. If you're used to perhaps traditional databases, a table is a term used to describe the place that you store data within. In the case of the CDS, we're talking about entities. So that's what we'll be working with today. You can implement robust security within the common data service as well. So depending on the needs of your business process or whatever it is that is required upon the data that you're going to be storing there, you can find the security roles and the multifaceted permission sets that are available to make sure the data is being secured in such a way that it truly reflects the needs of the business or the business process. And entities, as I alluded to earlier, are more than just a place to store data. So you have the ability to define fields, which are kind of the granular metadata bit that you can add in, or bits that you can add into your entity for storing different types of data. But there's more. So you can create business rules, you can design forms and views, charts and dashboards as well. So there is more to the entity than just adding fields. And we'll see a little more about all of that as we progress through the demonstration. One of the other really important things is you can model relationships very easily between your entities. So this isn't something that you need to start worrying about writing any kind of script or expression to do. You'll see how simple it is to create a relationship from one entity to another. So it's very appropriate for modeling these business relationships between data. What we're going to be doing in the demonstration today is a simple project management app. So we're going to track accounts and project details in this app. We are going to also provide the ability to capture a status report and connect it back with a project. We're going to require a process for our status reports to be approved with. And we're also going to do a little bit of interesting roll-up work so that we can see the budgets from our status reports roll up so that we have a good idea on the whole of the project, how we're progressing budget-wise. So the model-driven app is going to provide us with the interface for all this at the end, and that's what we're going to be working through in this session. So when you're building a model-driven app, one of the first things you're going to need to do is plan out your data model. So think about the different entities that you're going to use, the different fields, views, and forms that you might need. So we'll see a little bit more about how to use the fields, views, and forms. But in this case, you get an idea of kind of the relationships that we're going to be forming with the entities that we'll create in this scenario. So we're going to have an account. Accounts may have projects, or a project, or many projects, and every project may have many status reports. So that's the model we're going to be designing today. After you've went through the process of building all of your entities, and you've kind of got that part of the solution created, you combine it all in your model-driven app. So this is where we're leveraging that investment that we've made in the CDS with those entities that we've designed. We combine them into our model-driven app. There's more you can do as well. What you see on the screen in front of us here that I'm just highlighting on the bottom half of the screen is an example of a business process flow. So a very nice feature that we have available to us within model-driven apps is being able to create a business process flow where you can actually map out this different steps that someone should progress through as they're working with the data in an entity. So this allows us to very easily drive a business process along relating to an entity. What we're going to do today is create a business process for the approval of our status reports. And you'll get to see from the side of the design, creating a business process flow and how it actually comes to life. So these business process flows are actually really super because it makes it very apparent to the individuals who are working with the app what kind of data should be required at each step in the process. So, anyone coming into a process to say, oh, where's this, what's the status of this report that I've filed? They can really the business process, what step it's at, and understand all history around that as well. So, a great option to reduce kind of the investment in training in business processes, and they're very quick to build. So we'll see that today too. So let's get started with our demo now.
You know what I like most about the model-driven app is just that you don't have to be worried about the user interface. You can, design your entities and your data model, and you don't have to, go through all those formulas and things like that, which might be good for some people. I mean, for me, it's good because I'm not a good designer. All of my Canvas app looks ugly. And whenever people look at the Canvas app and they say, why all of these Canvas apps looks like this? Because in many cases, we need designers, right? You have to be some sort of, mobile or, front-end designer to be able to make a beautiful apps, I guess, on the Canvas side.
Yeah, that's a really important point, that I didn't mention, compared to Canvas apps where you can get that pixel perfect design in the Canvas app, model-driven apps, it's really generated for you. So after you've created your forms and views, the presentation is taken care of for you. And we'll see kind of how that comes to life with the model-driven app designer. Yeah, that's a really good point, though. So to begin making a model-driven app, you can go into the Power Apps Makers portal. So just go to powerapps.com, log in there. And what we'll find is we look in the left navigation. I'm going to start out in the Common Data Service to do this work. So we'll go over in the left navigation to Entities. And here we'll find all the entities that have been deployed into the Common Data Service database in the environment we're in. So I'm in this VAN Power Platform User Group environment, and we can see all the entities within it. And let's have a look at the account entity just to kind of familiarize ourselves with how an entity really exists within the Common Data Service. So you'll see that we have a navigation across the top here that's going to expose the different facets of the entity and kind of where you'll be working in as you design it. The account entity has all these fields that we see in front of us really to describe what an account is. So the account name is here, account number, rating, etc. So we've got all this metadata to help describe the account. And you'll notice there's a bit of information about each of these fields that have been added in. So we have the display name, the nice name that will appear on our forms. Next, we have the internal name. Occasionally, you may need to use that depending on if you're doing a little bit of work in a Canvas app or some development with the CDS, that may become relevant. The data type is another important one. So you'll see when we go into adding fields, how many different data types are supported here. So it makes it very easy for us to capture the data that we need accurately within our entities. You can see the type. Is it a standard entity or something that's managed? You also have custom entities. So this is a really important point. In the common data model, which all the standard entities are part of, when your database is deployed, you're going to have these entities deployed for you. Those are standard entities, and there's a distinction there. Custom entities are the ones you create from scratch. You can add custom fields into a standard entity. So if we wanted to extend our account entity and we wanted to add some of our own custom fields there, we could go about doing that too. So you'll see a few of these attributes about each of the fields. So we can see some are required, others are optional. And this is important. You can apply all these business rules on the data design so that you know that all the data coming into your entity is going to be sound because you've applied all these rules at the point of storage. So it's not going to accept anything that doesn't fit the schema properly. Next, we have the relationships. And you'll see that we have, for instance, the created by field is shown as one of the relationships here. Another great part of the Common Data Service is that it takes care of a lot of work for you. So, typically, or if you were working in perhaps another tool to store your data within, you'd have to do a bit of extra work to say, well, I know I need to keep track of who created a record and who modified it and when it all happened. So you'll need to add in these fields separately to do this work. The Common Data Service will take care of deploying those fields for you, and it takes care of tracking all those transactional type of attributes as well. So, there's a lot of extra value there, but along the lines of relationships, the created by field is a user type field. So this is, well, I should say it's a lookup type field that links back to the user entity. So here's where you can see all those relationships that are mapped out there as you design your fields. You have the ability to create business rules as well. So there's a visual editor here if you want to create some simple rules around the data, so that whenever perhaps a new account is added in, you want to put a due date for a follow-up on that. You could set a business rule to automatically set that date for you. And if you'd like to automate some of the values or actions around the data, you can do that with business rules. Next, we have our views. So depending on the needs of the individuals working with the entity, the different folks that are going to be interacting with your app down the road, you can create different views that'll slice and dice the data in such a way that it'll be presented to them in a way that will be very useful to them in their role. So we'll see how the views kind of are presented back to us as we kind of work through the example here. You've got the ability to drag and drop forms as well. Drag and drop form designer, I should say, for creating these forms. We'll get a look at that as we go through and building our project entity. You can create dashboards and charts. They have the ability to create keys as well if you need to create any further relationships or ID values. If we go over to the data tab on the far right, I'm just going to switch to view here and go to all fields. Let's try all accounts. We don't have any data in here, unfortunately, to show, but we'll change that in just a minute here. I'll just add in a new account record. So the account name, ABC Co. So this is a look at one of the forms that I was referring to. So on our account entity, this is the main form associated with our account entity. We can put in some information about this particular account. I'll just save that the way it is. And that's good. So now we'll go back and see if we have a new entry in here to look at. And we now see that account that's just been added in. And here's a quick way as you're working and designing in the CDS to test out the views that you've created. You can try these all out through the view selector here. So that's kind of an intro to the different facets of designing entities and working with them in the Common Data Service. But let's move on here and we'll create a project entity now. All I did was chose to create a new entity up there, and we are presented with this panel over on the right where it's asking us for a little bit of information about the entity that we're going to add in. So this is our project entity. And the next thing that's asked whenever we create a new entity is what is the primary name field? So we have to provide a name for this particular entity. And in some cases, just leaving it as a name, such as the project name, is very relatable and something that makes a lot of sense. In other times, you may want to change that depending on the entity. So we're going to do something a little different with the status report, but this looks perfect to get started on our project entity. So we have the name field that's there. That's great. And the next thing I'm going to do is relate our project entity to an account. So each account, or each project, I should say, is going to be linked back to an account. So you can see the selection that we have here available to us to choose from data types. And I'm going to choose the lookup entity. So something that you might have just noticed there is the screen lit up and a whole bunch of other fields appeared. And these are the fields that get automatically created and populated for you in certain cases by the Common Data Service. So that work just happened for us as we created the new entity. So back to adding our account field. So we chose a lookup data type, and the related table is going to be the account. And that should be good. So we'll add in a couple other fields to describe our project really quickly. So we want a start date. So you'll notice that the internal field name is kind of created for us. If you want, you can adjust it. This is going to be a date only field. And you obviously can set whether or not a field is required or recommended there. We have our end date next. Oops, I'm going to adjust that. We are going to do a project manager. So this is going to be another lookup field. In this case, we're going to be looking up back to the user's entity. So we can pick someone else from our team. In this case, that's going to be the project manager. We're going to include a budget. And this is going to be a currency data type. So we can keep track of the dollars and cents of all these projects that we're going to be managing. And that will do it for now on this particular entity. So we've now described a project that's part of our data model that we're building out, and it is related back to the account. The next thing that we're going to do after this entity has been saved is we're going to create the status report. So you can see how this is starting to take some shape. So we'll go back to our entities. I'm going to add in a new entity, and this is going to be the status report. So it gives us this nice pluralized version of that name. If we need to adjust it, obviously we can do that. And in this case, we're going to leave the name as it is for now, and then go and adjust it after. So it's added in a name field, but in some cases, like a status report, giving it a name may not be that simple or effective or easy to manage. So let's come up with an auto-generated ID for this particular field. And you have some options here. So you can do a string prefix number. So if we were to want to have something like status report, something like that, you can see you can prefix it. It's going to do an auto-generated number. You can do the same thing with the date as well. So you can see that we've got this date prefixed number that's coming for us. Or we could do something custom, which is what we'll do here. And we're going to do the year and the month, and then a sequential number after that. You can also set the seed value if you'd like. So that's how we're going to identify our status reports. The next thing we're going to do is add a lookup. So we need to keep these relationships going. Status reports are related back to a project. So we'll add in another lookup field. We're going to go back to that project entity that we just added in. And a couple other fields here. So we'll put in the report date. And that is just going to be a date only field. And the next thing we're going to do is add in a couple of option set type fields. So we need to keep track of the scope, schedule, and budget of this project. And let's use an option set. So option sets are really great because they provide you with the ability to create a managed pick list of values that you can repurpose and reuse in other entities if you need to. So in this case, we're going to create a new option set. And
Sean, there's a question in the chat that says, is from Faraz that asks, how reset that number once it's a new year? I think it's about the report date, right?
Yeah, so the name field on the status reports is using that auto-generated number, and the syntax that we used on the date was year and month. And what will happen is when we reach a new month, the seed value will reset. So that kind of keeps the unique, I guess, or the numbering, I guess, in sequence, but it is resetting at the beginning of each month. So this is going to be our new option set, and we'll call it status score. So we'll have a couple of choices here, whether or not something is on track, or it might require attention. So you can see it's now still tracking that we have an option set here, and it knows that we want to use the option set that we just created. We could set a default value if we wanted. I'm going to leave it blank, and I think that should be good for the scope field. Let's add in schedule and budget as well. And we'll refer back in this case to our option set again. So you can see how versatile these option sets are, and coming in handy for us already to save a bit of time. Next, we'll add in our budget. And the next thing we're going to do is add in just a couple more fields to close off the status report. So we'll do some notes, and that'll be a text area. And we're going to add in a field that we're going to roll up. So the spend amount, this period, that's going to be a currency value. It's looking good. And the last thing that we're going to put in is whether or not this particular status report has been approved. And that is going to be a 2 options type, and yes or no is good enough in this case. And I think our status report entity is now complete. And I'm going to jog back over to the project entity because I want to show everyone how the roll-up type fields work. So we'll add in one more field here, and this is going to be our, what we call this one? Yeah, reported spend. So this is going to roll up all the approved status reports spend values. So this will be a currency, and we're going to choose to make it a calculated or roll-up field. So we'll choose this roll-up option, and it's going to ask us now to save the entity with that field, and then it's going to allow us to continue designing this roll-up. So we can see the source is the project entity, and we now need to choose a related entity. So right away, it gives us the option of all the entities that are relating back to this project entity. So the status report is the one that we want. There it is. And we can apply a filter as well. So we might not want to roll up absolutely everything that's coming into the status report. We only want to show the approved values. So we'll turn off the The no value, we're only going to include items in the roll-up, status reports in this case, where the approved value is equal to yes. And then let's add in our aggregation. What are we going to roll up here? We're going to sum the spend this period. So that's that other field we added into the status report, and we now have a roll-up happening. So we'll save and close this. And all the design work in terms of the fields on these entities are looking pretty good now. So let's take a look at some of the other things we can do with entities here and go and set up some forms. So we'll go into the project entity first. And well, why don't we start with views? So we talked about views earlier. Let's have a look at the active projects view. So a few views are created for every entity by the service for you. So it saves you a bit of work. And I went into the active entity, the active projects view, I should say. Now let's decide which other columns we would like to include. So it's as easy as dragging and dropping these in. So we'll have the project name, which account it's been related to. What's the budget on it? We could include some of these other fields. There's the end date, move it around. So you can see how easy it is to provide a look into the data for someone that's stored within this entity. So let's include the project manager over here, and let's include that reported spend, that roll-up field. So we wanted to see how that compares to our actual budget. If you wanted to, you could apply some sorting. So you have the ability to do that here, or provide some filtering as well. If you don't want to show everything in your view, you can filter it down. So let's publish that. So we just modified that view that was created for us. Of course, we could have just created our own view if we wanted. So that's looking good. Now let's update the design of the form itself. So to be able to capture and work with the entity, we need to provide an interface or a form for people to be able to input data, read data with. So let's go over to the main form. This was generated by the service for us again. And again, we have this nice drag and drop interface. It looks pretty familiar to us now. So the name field is up there, and let's put all the other fields that we need in here. What is the budget, the account? Let's put in the end date, start date. Might want to rearrange those ones. So it's very easy for us to create these interfaces. These forms are very easy to create. And I think that's probably pretty good. We'll put in our project manager here as well. And I think that should be pretty good. But let's edit the design of this a little bit more. So because we've related status reports to projects, it would make sense that we'd be able to see all the status reports that are associated with the project. So let's just modify the design here a little bit. So let's change the layout. And what you'll see over here is we do have the ability to add tabs in if you would like to kind of separate views in your forms or separate sections of fields out. You can do that with tabs. So you have a few different options in terms of how you lay out the form. You saw in the account form that I was working in had a number of tabs in different sections. So you've got some flexibility there to make sure you're designing a form that shows all the interactions someone's going to need. But on this tab, let's split it out into a 2-column layout, and then let's expose the related status reports to this project. So we're leveraging those relationships that we were talking about earlier, and let's go up to our components. And I'm going to add a subgrid right over here into this new section that we just added in. So you'll notice that we had a little dialog appear down here. I want to show related records. And as soon as I click that off, it's smart enough to know where the relationships to the project entity are. So I don't really have to do any extra work here. It knows that the status report entity is there, and we're going to show the default view of the status report. So we now have a slightly better version of this form, right? We can see the related data. And I'm just going to give this section a nicer title. Let's say status reports. So this is cool. Let's save this one. and we'll publish it. So we are done our work with designing the project entity. We added in all the fields, we created a view, we've designed a form, and let's do a little bit of the same work for our status report. I should probably just do this, it's a little quicker. So let's go into that entity and do a little bit more work here. So let's go into our views, and we're going to go into the active status reports view. This is the one that we chose to display in the subgrid that we added into the project form. And let's put in all the fields that we want to see here. So we'll definitely want to know if a status report has been approved. Let's check out the budget. Oops. The budget. We'll do scope, schedule, and budget. These are all the important project metrics that we need to track. So that's looking pretty good. We want to know what the spend this period is. Every good project manager is always watching their budget. What's the date that this report was filed on? We won't put the notes in there, but something else I wanted to show is this is another really great feature. So let's say that we have our status report entity, and it's useful on its own to give us insight on a one-by-one basis, but we need a bit more context. Let's have a look at the other related data that we could show. So we can see everything that's been related here. So if we wanted to go back to the project entity, we could actually show attributes of the project that's related to the status report as well. So we'll put in the project name so we have a bit more context. And so there's very simple, to build these views that really show a lot of data that's part of this model. So we're actually exposing a little bit of information from the parent entity itself. And why don't we put in the budget related to the spend this period. So we've got a nice view into this collection of status reports. That may be too many fields for a very useful view, but you get the idea. I'm just having fun here. So we'll go and modify our form now so that we can actually input a complete entry for one of our status reports. So the name is going to be auto-generated, and that isn't something that we really want anyone modifying. So we can actually choose to make that a read-only field or lock it. So you can just click on one of the fields and affect the interaction that someone's going to be able to have with that field or the way that it's presented to them, perhaps. So you have a few different options around how you can kind of control those interactions. So we'll put in the approved field, put in some of these important metrics that are captured about our projects. We'll need to get the notes in there. We'll want to definitely relate our project status report back to a project. We need to get the report date in there. Have our scope, schedule, and budget again. And then we need to capture the spend this period so we can roll that up to the parent. You'll notice that the status field is here as well. So that's a stock field that gets deployed with every entity that's out there. And there's some extra behaviors you'll get to be able to see, to be able to deactivate a record, for example, can be done via the status field. That's another one of those nice features that just happens for you in the common data service. So I think we're in pretty good shape here. We've done the work in the CDS. We did our creating and modified some things, and now we're ready to move on. So I think we've covered off everything that needs to be done in there. So let's get into actually building our model-driven app now. So we'll go and create a new app. We are going to choose to build a model-driven app in this case. And let's give it a name. This is our great project management tool. So this is the screen you're going to see whenever you go to create a model-driven app. You can see there's a few other options you can enable here. As I mentioned, mobile offline capabilities there. And this is the design canvas that we work with when we're building a model-driven app. So obviously very different if you're familiar with Power Apps Canvas apps. This is a very different type of design canvas. So we aren't talking about adding in controls, setting properties, writing expressions. In this case, it's very much more a place that we're configuring with resources that are already part of the common data service, things that we've already built. So to start off with, I like to go right to the entities that I plan to work with. So we can come over here and there's the account entity that we definitely want to expose. And what else are we going to add in here? We'll put in our project entity and then include our status report. So we've added in 3 entities here, and you'll notice that we now have this stack of elements in our entity view. So that's looking good, and let's explore these a little bit. So when we go over to the account entity that we've added in, we can click on forms, and then we can actually decide which of the forms we would like to expose within the model-driven app. So you have some control at this point to determine how you would like folks to be able to interact with the resources that are associated with all these entities. The same goes for views, charts, and dashboards. So each of the entities is going to expose a similar kind of functionality based on what you've deployed in the entity. So we've done the work of adding our entities in, and the next thing that we'll do is build a sitemap. Oops, so I need to make sure I save this before I move on. And when we talk about, or when we're thinking about how folks are going to be interacting with the model-driven app, the paradigm that we have to relate this back to is the sitemap. And the sitemap is really going to be what will expose access to the entities and aspects of the entities that we've added into the app. And the way this is organized is we have an areas, groups, and sub-areas within our model-driven app. And let's go about designing a little bit of our navigation. So we see that the sitemap is seeded with these elements for us to begin with as well. So I'm going to relabel our area, and this will be the sales area. And we'll call this sales tools. And we're going to point this particular navigation element at our entity. So you can see you have different options based on whatever it is you would like to link to in the navigation. We're going to link this back to an entity, and we want to link this back to the account entity. And if we wanted to, we can give that a special label, manage accounts. So that's looking good. And let's continue designing. So we'll go over and add in an area. So we'll mark a new area of navigation, and this is going to be for projects. We want to put a grouping in. Call this project tools. Put in a sub area underneath that. And this is going to point at our projects entity. And that's actually looking pretty good. If we wanted to, we could add in, oh, why don't we just add in one more sub area so that people can see all the status reports too. So we'll just link that in really quickly, link that over to an entity, and there's our status reports. Oops. So that is looking good. So we have to save our sitemap and actually publish it before it can become effective, before it'll actually be deployed to the model-driven app. Let's go back over to the app designer now. So we've done all the basic work we need to create a model-driven app at this point. We're going to go and look at adding a business process flow that I talked about in just after this, but why don't we just stop for a minute and check our work. So I'm going to save the model-driven app itself. Let's validate it. So we have a couple warnings here, and typically these are about specifying which forms and views should be used by the different entities. But for now, we'll just leave the defaults in there and publish this model-driven app. And we can actually test it out from right here. So we'll play it and let's see where we're at. So we have a look by default into the sales area. So again, this is coming back to the terminology from the sitemap and that work we did building out our sitemap. We can move between the different areas that we mapped out in the navigation. So we can go between sales and projects. We go back to sales. You'll remember that we added in this sales tools section with the sub area of manage accounts. And there we go. We have access to our accounts entity. If we wanted to limit the views that people could interact with, you'll remember when I first added that entity into the model-driven app, I had the options of choosing which components I wanted to expose. We could see a subset of these if that were appropriate. But we can now interact with those views that we created on the, well, we didn't create the views on the accounts entity, but that's what's being exposed here. So let's go over to the project side of our model-driven app. And we can see we've got our list of projects here. We've got some status reports as well. And let's set up a project. So there's the form that we designed. We can see our status reports over here on the side. And we'll create a new, we'll call this the XRM Lite tool is the project. And we need to set an account. So this is one of the lookup fields. And all I need to do, if I've recently added in an account or it will be presented here as well, but we can just hit the enter key and it's going to show us a complete list of all the accounts, which is nice. We can actually change the view if we want to search another way or modify the lookup view that we're presented with. We need to set a project manager for this. So pick me for this one and let's set a budget. And put in some more metadata about the timelines for this project. So that's looking pretty good. And now let's add in a status report. So the name is actually going to be set for us along the way. We'll set in the report date and put in some of the important information that we want to capture in all of our status reports. So we'll put in the spend this period. And we'll save this. You know what, I'm going to say that it is approved in this case, so we can watch our roll up happen. And these are actually scheduled. You can go into the administration of the Common Data Service and set the frequency that these happen on. And let's recalculate. So we now see that it's actually rolled up that value that we put into the status report only because I marked it as approved. So we've now seen how to kind of relate entities. We see some of the great interactions we can quickly get out of these forms that we were able to build. But going back to our app designer and kind of furthering our investment in this model-driven app, let's align a business process with it. So in this case, we're going to create a new business process flow so that we can walk someone through the creation report and kind of guide that process along. So we'll give it a name, status report process. This is a business process flow, and let's find that status report entity. So there it is. This is what how we're gonna link it up. So we've given all the meta information we need. We know this business process flow is now related back to our status report. We captured all that when we initiated it. And you might remember from the slide I was showing where I was talking earlier about business process flows, we saw those steps at the top of the screen that were part of the process. So this is where you get to map out those stages, is what they're actually called. And at each stage, you have the ability to map in data steps. So you can decide at which stage along the way certain data needs to be provided for that entity. So in our case, we're going to be requiring that bits of information about the status report are provided at each step along the way. So it's going to walk an individual submitting a status report through this process very nicely. So we'll go back to this particular stage. Let's give it a name, and we'll just call it the headline information. So we need to capture a little bit of information about this particular status report. And let's provide the details. So the data steps are going to be what we'll include here to map out what's going to be required as inputs for this step. So we definitely want the project to go into that headline section. And let's put in another data step. So our data step 2, we're going to put in the report date. So we'll go find that. So again, leveraging that investment we made in kind of designing our entity, it's very easy now to model out a business process flow that relates back to all the attributes of that entity. Another stage. Put a condition in, you could do that, and your business process flow can actually be routed down a different path. That would indicate to the individual in the app perhaps a different set of steps if the conditions were appropriate. So you have some flexibility there. So we'll put in a few more fields here, put in scope, schedule, and budget. Oops, I forgot to apply this one here. So that was the schedule. So we're now capturing the scope, schedule, and budget, and we'll put in the spend this period as well. So we want to make sure that gets captured. So what do we call this stage? We want to give it a nice name so people kind of get what it is they're seeing and where they're at in this process. This one we're going to just call status update. We'll apply that. And we'll put in one more stage for the approval step. Put in a data step here. And we'll just set that approved flag on the final stage. So we now have a very simple business process flow, but hopefully it'll demonstrate the concept to everyone. So it's validated successfully. Now let's activate it. And we'll, in the background, it's taking care of making sure that everything's provisioned that needs to be. And we're going to have a active business process flow linked back to our status report. So that is all looking good. And let's close this off and go back to our app. And so let's just make sure we've got this all linked up as well. So we want to make sure that we have the status report process. And I think I accidentally added in something I didn't need here. So we'll get rid of this entity. I accidentally clicked off a different process there, but you can see how we have to actually specify the business process flow. So I unchecked all and I specified status report process. So that linkage is now there. So we can validate again and publish this. And then we'll go ahead and run it. And we'll go back to projects area in our model-driven app. And we'll submit a new status report and see how this experience has changed for us. So we now have this lighting up for us. We've got a business process flow for our status reports. Pretty cool. So we can just click on this and it's going to actually ask us to provide all the information at each step from those data steps that we mapped into the business process flow. So there's a little bit of critical information there. Let's save this. So we can see we now have this auto-generated number appearing. That's the ID of our status report. And let's progress our business process flow along. And I have found that sometimes I have to wait for this button to appear, but you get the idea there. We'll submit this. So we can save this one. See if this is going to light up for us. We might have to come back. But let's go back to our projects entity so we can go check out this project again. We now see 2 status reports. The reported spend is still sitting at 2,000 though, because we haven't actually approved this one that we just added in. So let's just go back into it. And I'm not sure if this is going to light up for us yet or not, but we'll approve this anyway. And then we can force the refresh of this. It will happen on a scheduled basis, or you can just ask it to recalculate like that. Okay. So yeah, that covers some building and creation of a basic model-driven app, and demonstrated, I think, a bunch of the key parts that you'll need to get used to interacting with there. And yeah, that covers it. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone's got any.
It's been great, Sean, and I see a couple of comments on the chat that they really like the demo because you went through, from the entity all the way to form and views and, these business rules and business process flows all the way to the to the app designer. So the end-to-end, the process, end-to-end process is just half an hour or something like that. So great.
And while I may be a Canvas app guy, for me to create the save and close, the print, the export, all the stuff that you get for free in a model-based app would take me a really long time. And what Sean needs to do is file new, add a group, done, published, he's finished. And so that would take me, maybe an hour or two. And he gets it all for free, all the print preview, all the export. So, I have to give the model-based guys a nod for productivity.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing how fast you can design things with. And a lot of the things that we're doing here will translate for us into Power Apps portals as well, if you want to go in that direction. So you do get a ton of mileage out of this. The flow integration is awesome. We've done some really interesting things for some customers with that Power Automate flow integration too. So while you're on a particular record, you could say, I want to initiate an automation right from here related to this specific project. So you can build some specific functionality, integrating with flow super easily into these model-driven apps as well.
So Sean, one quick question in terms of deciding, like this comes up a lot, that when you want to build an app, how do you decide which one to choose first? Do you have something in mind that you go through the process of designing the app in your mind and then decide maybe a model or Canvas app, or is it based on the requests that your customer asking you, for instance, we want to do this thing within the app? How do you decide between each one of these?
It's a great question. So there's a few different factors there, and Chuck, you probably got some. You guys have probably got some insight into this process as well. But we often find that kind of for those back office type processes where there's a lot of data entry, that's usually a pretty big flag for going the direction of a model-driven app. If there's a requirement for that pixel perfect design, something that needs to look and feel like something out of an app store, consider a Canvas app. There's
luckily, Sean, that decision tree is going to go away. We're not that far away. We've actually just opened up a private preview for 10 people to take a look at the synthesis of where model and Canvas is coming together. That's probably NDA. I probably shouldn't be talking about it, but it is in the roadmap. So if you go out and look at I'm going to be publishing the launch wave stuff that James Phillips is going to do, and he's going to do demos of it. So yeah, maybe a little bit NDA, but it's not that.
I think you're fine, Charles, because I remember actually Charles Lemana was talking about this last year in BizApp or something like that. That he was saying that we're gonna remove this, friction that you have to decide between the apps, which is great. So You should be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. Unfortunately, he has the title of CVP, so he gets to talk about a lot of things with no repercussions. Me, less so. But anyways, no, I'll be fine. But that decision tree is not that far away where we don't have to worry about it. So thank God.
Yeah, that's awesome. That'll be pretty incredible. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have a quick question. This is Uday Adhikari. So if I want to give another example, like it's the same example. Let's say I'm entering XRM Lite tool, a new record, and then I know you created a subgrid, you put the entity, the related table in there. And what I want to do is, let's say I have 100 items that are related to XRM tool. Is there a way to, like an grid style, kind of like entering data rather than new, like every time I have to enter, click on new?
Interesting. So you're kind of wondering if there'd be an interface, which would be a little bit more kind of like an Excel spreadsheet or a
Right,
grid
exactly.
data entry within.
Right.
So there's a couple options there. I don't believe I don't know if there's a data entry grid control like the one you're describing there available natively.
There's
but
one
there
actually. There's one, the editable grid. I mean, Mander also posted in the chat here. You can go and add that component for that, right?
Yeah, so editable grid is only for the new record that I'm going to add. Will that work for a new record?
I've used actually Excel features on model-driven. Go, for instance, to the list of project. Sean, you can use Excel Online to, enter new information exactly right from there on the export to Excel. There's a section there that says actually
that's a plugin. Yeah,
if you click,
I've used that.
on that. Yeah, I found it kind of helpful in many cases, which is the first one actually that says open in Excel Online.
And that's how I do it as well, Uday.
So is wanting to, they don't want to do the plugin, they want to do within the grid. And so if their record is already, so the example is they have a machine and that machine has chemicals that they need to pour and start an order, because these are making semiconductors, all those like the iPhone and all of those machines that are they're making. So what they're doing is they get chemicals in batches, right? Like a truck. And so they're like clicking on new. They don't want to do that. And so I was trying to see there's an option. You can change the grid to edit mode, but you can only edit on a view on an existing, not a new one. So the existing I was able to do, but the new one I could not find a way. I might have to go back to just this one and say, hey, tried use Excel, and they all are using Excel anyway. So
I actually started writing a control that did that, Uday, until I found out that Nijo had actually already created one. So I actually put that link in there and see if that one doesn't work for you. But yeah, I started playing with creating a PCF control that did this, and then I realized that somebody else already had done most of it. So that's when I reset it back into that bot one that I wrote. So
okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
One more thing, actually, I would say on the addition of the new record is the quick addition quick add, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I found that kind of helpful because it doesn't go to another window. It just pops up on the corner. It's quite fast as well. Lots of options, right?
Yeah, especially when you're editing, right? So it's related. You have the quick window on the side, the quick form on the side, so you can see which record you're editing. So without losing, very useful.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I think next up is Chuck to walk us through the project Oakdale.
Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to apologize in my semantics. I'm going to be a little bit sloppy because when we talk about Project Oakdale, that was actually specifically around a version of the common data service for being bolted in a lightweight manner into office. So we'd actually started this before the COVID-19 mess that we're in right now. And we wanted to make it easier for going out and integrating with SharePoint and Teams for going out and making things available. And when I say things available, again, I'm being kind of sloppy, but I'm talking about the fact that if you go out and take a look at everything that Sean just did, all of those fields, all those views, those are actually defined in the common data services in entities themselves. There are rows that they're done. So we actually hold all of our state in this common data service repository. It's not just about adding like data that you interact with, like when Uday was talking about where they're doing drugs or trucking or whatever it was he was mentioning, but it's actually state information. So when you go out and create a solution, that solution definition are rows in a common data service entity. So why do I have this chat window with Yana? Of course, Yana being a Canadian and I'm chatting with her. But I wanted to start off this story with saying that we've actually had before Oakdale some Teams integration. So I can go out and click on this Million Dreams application and you'll see that it works. I now have, and this is again before Oakdale. I think I actually did a demo for us a little while, and you have bars up here, and the way you did it is you did an export to a zip file that created an application, and then you went out to make a personal app, you did an import of the zip file. I don't want to say it was inelegant, but it wasn't friction free. And we wanted to resolve that, especially now that we're in this world where Teams is the hub of everything that people are doing. So let's actually walk you through, and this is actually my Microsoft tenant. So over here to one of our dev tenants, and I'm looking at Microsoft Teams. This could have been the client, but I actually am not connected back into my account, so I couldn't have joined the team or the user group meeting. That's why I'm in the web experience. But you'll see that I've actually got all these applications. And these are the same applications that Ali was showing us earlier. And we're going to get to that in a second. But I wanted to show you what they look like because they're actually very, very elegant. You can't tell. Oh, it looks like I haven't even started this one. So I thought I had. My apologies. That's actually not a great example. Let's actually do another one that is, you literally cannot tell where the app starts, and the reason for that was actually for the mobile form factor. But this one, you can't see where Teams starts and Power Apps begins. So this is actually a Power App that's running on it. What also I'm going to point out is that this is actually responsive, and if you go out and look at those templates, and I do recommend it, you'll see that there's no code for that because we've actually now delivered a responsive UI. And again, I'm going to be sloppy because I'm going to say in Project Oakdale, but Project Oakdale is just a common data service. It's actually with all of the other accoutrement, if you will, in Power Apps as part of Oakdale. So there's now a responsive set. It's actually a container, and you put controls in that container. So that's amazing for people who have actually ever had to hand code that. I've got a couple other user group leaders on with Mander, Zope, and Uday. Have you guys, and the reason I'm calling you out is because if you've actually written Oakdale applications, you don't mind sharing them, I'd love to look at them. Uday, have you had a chance yet, or?
No, I kind of basically just briefly looked at it. I know Reza and a few other guys are, but Rez
has been on the private preview for a while.
Right, right.
And Mander, are you still on the call? Have you had a chance?
I've just created a simple application just to see how.
Yeah.
That's okay. Exactly. All right. So let's go through and do that. So again, this application definition is actually in that Oakdale repository, and this Oakdale repository sits underneath of this Teams tenant or this Microsoft Office tenant. So when I go out and do file new, but before I do that, I want to actually show you that in addition to Power Apps, you can get, what was. I was actually on the team until recently. I just reorged back to Power Apps because I was actually on the Power Virtualization team. But all of those topic definitions, all of the transcripts, those are entities inside of Oakdale, inside of this tenant. So not just Power Apps, but also chatbots. And when we take a look at it, and I'll scroll through the, I don't want to say the CDM for Oakdale, but the directory that is shipped with it, you'll see that they have all kinds of entities about maintaining state. So going through and doing exactly like what Ollie was doing. Let's go ahead and get started and create one. I promised him it would take 10 minutes. I think I've already lied because I've been chatting for a little while. So we're going to go ahead and actually just go out and start a brand new Power App. Homepage of that portal that he was looking at. And you'll see if I go out into my build, sorry, I meant to go build, you'll see that I actually get an app and a chat bot, and under app, I can actually go out and define whether or not it's the mobile form factor or a tablet form factor. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it the default, go back to home. And if those apps that I was just showing you, here are those templates. And just like when he showed you the, Ollie was showing you the return to work, you get all the source code and you can go out and edit it, and you can do your own stuff. You can change the colors and change the buttons. And again, as Sean was talking about, this is pixel perfect. I mean, I can drag the controls around to where I want them. So let's go ahead and create an application. Oh, and I didn't point it out, but yeah, I can't scroll down. This is actually something else I want to talk about. Even though Oakdale, or actually, there's a one-to-many relationship that Oakdale sits underneath of your tenant. I don't know if that's the right singular or way of referencing it. And I can go out and decide which team do I want to put this application to. So I can go ahead and choose my group 92. And that's the one that in this dev environment is actually has access to. And what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and add, just like you would with a app from data, or AFD. I don't know if you've heard of that term. It's going to go out and add some galleries in there with some navigation. And let's go ahead and call this one. I'm going to call all E is great. There we go. And it's going to go out and ask me what data do I want to wire this up to. And this is actually, now we're finally to what is really Oakdale. So let's go ahead and say that I'm going to create my Mander. Mander is an AR or ER? It's ER, right?
Yeah.
And underneath advanced settings, all I get is the plural. So I'm going to go ahead and choose create. And you'll see that the experience that Sean was walking us through, we are actually creating a brand new entity just like what he was doing. So let's go ahead and add a new column. So if I've already got one called name, let's have one called last name. And I'll create that. And you can actually see under advanced options, I can choose the length. Last name is 100 is fine. Let's go ahead and we'll add one more column. How about image? And even though you don't see it in here, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember the specification right, image is a URL. So we should actually be able to overload URL to be an image. Let's see if I remember that correctly. And choose create. At this point, let's go ahead and just so we have some data in here, I'm going to go out and say, Sean, it's Panter, right? I want to say Painter. There's no I in it though, right? Oh, Sean's gone. Okay.
Oh, that's good. You got it right.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I keep saying Painter, but it's spelled Panter. Okay. And then I think I'm going to put Yana's picture in there. So if I go click on Yana and, oh yeah, here she is. So I'm going to get Yana's picture for Sean. Sorry about that. I should have actually looked you up. And I paste it. And now, was there a save button? No, I think it actually does just save it.
Just
yeah,
saves.
Okay. It's saved. Yeah. So it's still like portals in that regard. Is all I have to do. Actually, like Teams or SharePoint, all I have to do is actually just navigate away from it, and it did it. So now, if I close this and I go back to my application, it's going to refresh that, and it's going to show me that custom. And actually, in this case, it assumed that I wanted it and already wired it up. I don't know if you noticed this. It actually wired all those fields and everything up to me for me. So if I go ahead and hit save and preview or run, it is now running inside of Teams, and I can actually add a new value. So let's go ahead and say my new record. Well, actually, I chose edit. I wanted to do new, and we're going to go out and have Uday and is the best. And I need another picture. So let's just go out and I don't know who this person is, but Uday, you're going to be her. Oh, wow. I don't know if that's going to work. Let's actually, I know my URL will only accept 256. I wonder if this will work. I probably got somebody that's famous. I shouldn't have. No, that URL is never going to work. How about this lady? She got a better URL for me? Open. Yes, much better URL. Okay, good. And if I go out and put that there and hit save.
I think
I still did the image too short. That is a shame. Okay, you get the idea. So what I can do is just put it up there, and it won't display it because as a result. I wonder if I can. I do want it to work. I want to see.
I think the top field is the image. I think the fields are rearranged.
Oh, I typed it in wrong. Thank you.
Yeah.
Day. I'm glad one of us is paying attention. And I got the wrong lady at this point. Is this the one that was broken? Anyways, we're gonna stick with Yana. We're not gonna mess around with this anymore. Now when I hit save, and I've actually got Sean, I've got Uday, and I can actually navigate from these. And these are just regular galleries and an edit form that you've played with many times. So you've done. I've got people that deliver the app in a day in here, so they're going to feel very comfortable with the experience. There's also, I think, there's actually some other features in here that actually haven't been released in the normal version. I was looking at it. I don't think variables is actually in, quote, the regular Maker portal. So I can actually go out and see that this is actually the variable state. So when I'm actually looking at the monitoring and I see what's going through, I can actually go out and see how my variables are walking through. And I don't think that's actually available yet. So I haven't seen anybody announce it. And I know it's coming, but I saw that we kind of linked it through. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I saw there, Chuck, if you go back to the previous screen there, and on the left side on that rail, there's a plus button. If you click on that, there's like a ton of items here, even mixed realities here. So it's kind of interesting to see all of these features kind of releasing here. So that's really awesome.
And this is, we had a question earlier about that. If you go out and add that gallery that I have the link in there, this is where you're going to find it. You're actually going to find it underneath the components in that plus sign. So yeah, when you add those PCF controls in this grid, you're going to find it here. But yeah, definitely play with it. Like I said, there's some features that we've kind of leaked through that we've been working on. Like I said, responsive that's in here, the variables, and you're not going to be able to play with that, which actually starts begging some other questions. What's the compatibility? What do I get? What do I don't get? Right off the bat is that a lot of the features that Sean was pointing with, where he actually has like restricted entities and he actually had access to all of the CDM that was available from the common data model. It's not all here yet. I know the team's working on it. I don't know if we actually win and if we're going to get parity, but you're going to find entities from the common data model that you're not going to see listed here. So you're going to have to actually create it. Now that actually begs other questions about how do I get my data in here? Well, Sean's already pointed out one excellent way is going out and using flows and piping your data back into these entities, because the flow, Microsoft Flow still works fine because actually, again, Oakdale actually will preserve all of those flow definitions for you. Additionally, I know the team plans on implementing, it's not done yet, but they're planning on getting data flows. So that way you can actually use your gateway and your refresh cycle to start pumping data into these entities as well. I don't think the get data experience for Power Query is something that's going to be in the short term. We're going to be using data flows if I'm to understand that the roadmap, but that's still a little bit further out. So that's a great, primer, if you will. And this is actually a walkthrough of, it's close to what I did. Maybe not exactly. I haven't really looked at it in a while. And that link is directly off that home page that Ollie was just showing us. So if we actually go back in here and leave this, you'll actually see that this is the same, basically it's called the Apps Hub, I think is actually what it is for Power Apps. And this is that pin that he showed us. And you'll see all the way at the bottom is create your first app. So maybe not the exact steps, but it certainly will be enough to get you started to where we just did it. And from here, I do recommend going out and going to either Uday's or Mander's or Sean's app in a day and actually going through their steps and see if you can get it all wired up inside of your team's environment, because you should be able to get it all working. So anyways, with that.
Do you know when these contents will be part of App in a Day? I know that probably will release something. For
Yeah, so Yana actually owns that. It's kind of funny that I actually have all these pictures of Yana. That's not Yana. Had all these pictures of Yana because she actually is the one that is actually working on that right now. So you know Yana. Why don't you actually email her? You can copy me, and we'll both know. I know they're working on it. I just don't know the date.
Awesome.
And she's working with a person by the name of Julie Yak to get that work done.
I know Julie.
Yeah, there you go. So either Yana or Julie should be able to give us the date. And I know they're working on it. For the RPA in a day, that work is almost done. A person by the name of Lisa Crosby is almost finished with that.
So RPA in a day, actually, that's something that I forgot to mention. I'm going to paste the chat here. So Kent Veer, who's one of our PowerCat leaders, he announced today, actually, the RPA in a day is released. So this is a new RPA in a day version 2, which kind of has all the components for Power Automate Desktop. So I just actually pasted in the chat. Go check it out. It's kind of interesting that how fast team kind of released this new version of the RPA in a day that has all the components or new additions that we announced in Ignite. So go check it out. It's quite interesting.
And I apologize.
They kind of remove the soft-motive pieces and they just replace that with Power Automate Desktop. So it's just a revamped and it's a good exercise to go through.
And I said it was Lisa Crosby. It was actually Lan Lee. I misspoke. Lisa's working on the PVA in a day for the bots. Two great ladies. I confused them. So anyways, Ollie, I'm going to hand it back to you to actually close.
Awesome. All right. Any questions? Any comments? I know that we lined up Fernando for next month, hopefully. Fernando, if you want to just connect with me, just let me know if you want to demo something, the application that you're building. Other than that, I don't have anything. If anybody has any comments, we're happy to stay and answer the questions.
Just going to do a bit of promotion here, Ali. This is Rem. So in our meetup, we actually have Kent doing the Power Automate Desktop. So I think Sean can probably put up that link. So if you guys are interested, that'd be a good show, I think, just to highlight some of the new features on that Power Automate Desktop.
Kent's amazing. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can maybe get Kent as well to this user group as well. So I'll talk to him. Let's see if he can come over here as well.
We have to get him into a different topic. He's actually done a bunch of advanced bot stuff. So we'll actually have him do some advanced bots, like maybe wiring up like the Graph API or something.
Awesome. All right. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you so much for